gang, Emily here. There's no way that you don't know this about me if we have ever spoken or if you follow me on social media, but I've worked for a long time as a florist, and in quarantine I've really been missing plants and flowers, and I have a lot of plants in my house, but I've really been missing flowers. So I trudged over to Trader Joe's in Queens and waited in line for like an hour and a half, and they are fully stocked. So if you want to join me with this video and you want to first go either make a pilgrimage to a store that has flowers, some supermarkets are carrying them as well, or just watch and enjoy, I'm gonna make a bunch of different arrangements and kind of talk you through my process. I've talked for a long time about doing something like this, but it may be in person. I teach flower design classes, terrarium classes, plant care classes, kokedama making classes, which is a type of bonsai. And the shops I've always worked at, I've done those sorts of classes, but never have I been able to bring that to my musical community. So if that's you, thanks for tuning in. And I want to sort of walk you through how I think about this stuff. I have a couple of different size vessels. The cool thing about flower arranging is I joke all the time, I say it's like arts and crafts for adults, but you can really make a beautiful arrangement in whatever vessel you want. I have some really big ones, I have some really wide mouth ones, I've got some little ones as well. We'll start from some stuff. I think I'm gonna start first with just like a little mason jar, which everybody has. I have all these flowers here, so Trader Joe's A+, a couple of different textures and sizes, but basically the same color palette. So when I'm choosing an arrangement, unless I've been given some specifications from a client, I just kind of go for a nice mix. I like texture, and I like mixing some colors. So basically I've got a handful of colors and then some like little pots. I didn't really go too crazy because I wanted this to be digestible for anybody. So whites and greens and things. Orange is my bright color. I've got here some beautiful double tulips and some kangaroo paw, which is an Australian flower, and then some pops of peach and a little bit of blue and some like light purple kind of strewn about, and we'll kind of go from there. Cool. So first I'll start with a mason jar. When you're picking a vessel, you don't want to think about how you're cutting flowers or what flowers you're choosing based on the height, because that you can change. You can take any stem and make this as, if you want it to be long or you want it to be short, that's easy. Obviously this is too long for this vessel. You want to look at the width of the mouth. So with this one, it's about that big. You know, different mason jars, I have those really wide mouth ones. That's what you want to look for, because that's going to dictate where the flower like falls into place. So you start with some greens, and I've got some eucalyptus here, some sand dollar eucalyptus. There's a lot of different types of eucalyptus. This is a really common one. I'm sure you've seen this before, where it just looks like little sand dollars. One thing you can do as well with these big stems is you can get more bang for your buck by cutting at different like knuckles. So I've got my little clippers here. If you don't have clippers, kitchen shears will work, or if you want to make a trip to like a Home Depot or something, any garden center is going to have these different types. So I'm going to kind of eyeball, and you want to start with green. So basically you're taking like an empty space and you're creating structure with what you've got to fill in those holes. So it's going to be different depending on what stem you grab and where you place it, but it's kind of a process. So I have in my head right now a little bit of a vision of what I'm going for with this, but I encourage you to not necessarily have something in mind unless you've done this before. Just kind of follow the steps and then see, you can make adjustments as you go. Just like in music as well, again, for those of you who are musicians watching, which is probably most of you, because that's like the only people I know, there's style that comes out as well. So like I said, I like texture, I like certain colors. This color palette is one that I like a lot. But even within that, you could give this batch of flowers to 4 different florists, and you can get 4 totally different arrangements. So that kind of stuff comes out as you go. All right, so we're starting with just the greens. And the way I cut it, I just kind of eyeballed it. But what you can do is I'm going to show you this way versus like my side of the table. You can you hold the stem up to the vase, placing the focal point where you want it to be, and then you cut from there. So I shot a little bit under. Just like cooking with salt, you can never take salt out, but you can always add more. So I didn't cut quite as much as I wanted to. And I can cut some more. And that should fall into place right there. Here, you never want to let leaves or just stuff on the stems be in the water. That that's what's gonna rot out on you more quickly. In the same way you'd never, like, if you go to the farmer's market and you get veggies, you'd never leave those veggies just like sitting in water, because stagnant water is a breeding ground for bacteria always, and that's where things sort of start to rot out. So you want to avoid putting leaves in the water itself, maybe a little bit, but generally speaking, try to steer clear. I'm actually just going to make the executive decision and cut that first one into 2 different pieces because I decided against it. Okay, so I've got just a little bit of greenery. Like, that looks great, you know, on its own. Eucalyptus is great because you don't have to do much. Now what I've done is created some structure, and if you're doing this with me, look into your vase. You'll see the way that the stems are kind of starting to crisscross. That becomes what holds up the other stuff. There are some other things you can do. I'm just kind of freestyling on that. There are things like this. I don't know if you can see it. It's just like a mason jar lid that has like chicken wire on the top of it. And what that does, there's all sorts of things like this. I think I picked this up at like a flea market. That allows that structure, that provides something for you to stick the stems into so that they will stand up on their own. Another thing you can do to achieve that, and I'll show you when I talk a little bit about this guy, that florists will do, is create that grid work with floral tape. You can do it with Scotch tape. It's not quite the same, but it gets the point across enough. But we're still here in this little mason jar. We've got a little bit of greenery. Because of how little this one is, I don't really want to do more than that for now, because I want to use the good stuff in there. So you start with your greens. That creates your grid. Then you go to more sort of fillery flowers. There's basically 3 categories of flowers. There's like greens, which can also be decorative. There's greenery, there's filler flowers, and then there's focal flowers or face flowers. People have different words for these sorts of things. And you want to, depending on what you're going for, generally speaking, you want to highlight the face flowers, you want to highlight the focal flowers more than the greenery, unless you're saying, I just want a vase of eucalyptus, and then go for it. But for now, I'm going to do a little bit of a mix. So I've got here all sorts of yummy stuff. These could be face flowers, but for now I'm going to use them as a filler flower. This is called Lizzianthus. We call it Lizzie's or Lizzie sometimes. And they look like little roses, basically, like a little wildflower rose. And again, I'm just eyeballing, but what you could do, like, I cut off as much as I want. If you see how much higher than the vase that flower is, like, I need to go a little bit lower. What you can do there as well, and what I'm going to do, is you see how this, if I cut here at that knuckle, that gives me this one and this. So that gives me 2 for, you know, the price of 1, basically. And that shortens the whole thing. You're just trying to get as much as you can out of each stem, basically. For florists, it's so you can make the arrangement fuller, you know, on the budget. But in general, it's just, you know, again, unless you have a very minimalist, like, clean look in mind, you can do more with what you've got. So this, I think, is going to end up being good. What I'm doing is I'm just kind of looking, just kind of sticking stuff in. This is going to start to create my structure. That's what I'm looking at. That's the view. I'm going to make this a one-sided arrangement, meaning you'd stick it up against the wall or something, and there's like a back and then there's a front. Then I'll turn it into a round arrangement, like you would have it like a table. So some other little filler buddies are these sweet little carnations. Carnations get a bad rap because they suck a lot of the time, but sometimes they don't, and it depends what type you get, where it's from, how the quality of the flower as well. Generally speaking, Trader Joe's and Whole Foods get pretty good quality flowers. Again, just like with the Lizzie, see how many stems are on the sides there? So I'm gonna use these. There's a couple of flowers that sort of like were considered dated at a certain point, and even styles of arranging. So carnations were really big in like the 20s. If you think about like the old mobsters that would have like a red carnation on their lapel, it was like very, very chic. You know, that maybe is going to be hip again, but since then, carnations have kind of gotten this reputation for being like, everyone gets one at the 8th grade graduation, or like whatever. They're pretty cheap as far as flowers go, because they can grow really well in this climate in the Northeast. So, you know, but like I said, just do a little bit of digging. These I thought were really sweet. I love the like peach color. And I like how many that you get to a stem, plus they were super close. So I'm kind of piecing in these little sweet little guys. So again, there's the front. Let me get a little closer so you can see. so now I've got my filler, I've got my greens. We can always add more. Decisions, huh? I'm gonna add in some thistle because again, I feel like it. This also is a nice filler. Thistle I love. There's tons of different colors, there's tons of different types. This one is called, this is a type of raspberry thistle. When you picture just like blue thistle, or if you Google thistle, you'll probably see what I'm talking about, where it looks like a raspberry on top of this the little face of it. These guys are super adorably small, which is very cute, but they're sort of delicate, even though it's kind of an aggressive flower. Same thing, we have potentially 1, 2, 3, 4 stems out of this one piece here. So I'm only gonna use, I think I'll use 2 or 3. Traditionally, odd numbers kind of match in florist world, but nowadays and this is a style I love, this sort of like wispy, secret garden, like asymmetrical, everything is sort of textural. You don't necessarily have to do odd numbers, you can do 2 or 4, this and that. There's a lot of history that goes into numbers of flowers as well. If you think back to people talk, there was a book that came out at one point called The Language of Flowers, but there was always a culture around what certain flowers meant, and certain combinations would mean this, and that dates back to the Victorian era. Nowadays, people will come in and say, what do yellow roses mean? And it's like, I always say, like, whatever, like, does the person like it? Do you like it? Unless you follow that culture, which really nobody does, it's very niche, just go with the aesthetic of it, because it just means, you know, it's what you like there. So I think I'm gonna do 3. So this big tall guy we'll save for later. These are all super long. Again, that means that if I put that, I'm thinking putting it here. So what I'm gonna do is cut that just a little bit. And at this point, there are enough stems going in here that we're gonna start to get that structure. And when you put it in, I'm kind of shaking it to get it into place, because it'll kind of fight back and you want it to go where you want it to go. So when I want it to go here, we got tulips, we got some delphinium, we got some snapdragon, so don't worry, there's more coming. Actually, I'm just gonna do 2. It just needs 2. Little guy, you'll stay there for later, cool. Next, so now this is a pretty, even though there's the blue in there, this is a pretty like even palette. I want some color pops. I'm gonna add some tulips, because I love tulips. These are awesome, and they have all these like a lot of these grew with extra little double ones. Like I was saying earlier, you don't want the stems in the water, because the cooler thing to look at is the flower. So I'm gonna take off probably 2 of these. Again, take a look at it as you're going, because it kind of means a different thing. Maybe even 3. I'm taking off 3, that's fine. Oop. So then that means that this is what we're looking at. Tulips are kind of, I always say that they're like the zombies of the flower world. There's something in them, and this is in bulb flowers a lot of the time, but especially tulips. The plant is like programmed to keep growing, and it's such a water-based plant that you can cut these and stick them in water. Have you ever had tulips where you look at the vase the next day and like they are like taller, or they're like in a different place or something? Because they're programmed to keep going, and they'll keep growing and growing until they like grow out, and then they're dead. So that's a pretty cool thing there. They'll just kind of keep going and going. That being said, if you use tulips in arrangement and you're feeling like you need to pay attention to that as you're going, you may want to like take it out and give them a trim in a day or 2. Or like if the dinner party's tomorrow and you're doing it now, shoot a little bit shorter than not, because they will grow, which is, I think, such a cool thing. I'm gonna stick one right here in the front. But generally speaking, you want to kind of think of the shape. I always think of, this goes for I think anything in the arts world. I think of it in like 4 categories: color, shape, texture, and line. So that goes for food, that goes for dance, that goes for, certainly for music. There's a lot of things where obviously that applies to, but in flowers, okay, the colors, you know, do you want it really monochromatic? Some people like that. Like, I only want whites and greens. It's a beautiful look. Do you want it to be a little bit more bold? Do I only want bright neon colors? Great. You know, you can kind of do whatever you want. And then within that, the combination of those things is a part of the discussion as well. The shape, meaning a couple things. One, the shape of the actual the materials you're using. Like, oh, this, you know, these, I have a lot of textural stuff here. Like I said, I like texture. Or the shape of the arrangement itself, where like this little guy, I'm making it pretty straightforward. It's kind of like doing this at you, because this is, like I said earlier, one-sided. So you want it to have some arc to it that you can see. There's also, I'll add in some tall stuff in a second. Like, do you want it to start like this and go that way, or does it want to go this way? that also kind of plays into line, like you're seeing lines appearing in the arrangement itself. And then texture is texture. Is it the actual textures you're using or them paired with other things? I think it's a really cool thing to think about it that way. If you're just doing tulips and the ends of the leaves don't look gross or they're not too floppy, save that. In fact, I'm going to, because who knows, maybe I'll use it later. It's kind of okay, and I've gotten teased at every shop I've worked at for being a little bit of a hoarder. I'm like, no, save that little piece, we could use it. But you never know. You might be like, oh, I need that one scrap I threw away earlier, you know, and it's rather than breaking off a whole new piece within reason, save your stuff, because you never know if you're going to use it or not. This is just so adorable. How sweet. Okay, now we'll take a tall, you know, this, honestly, this could be done. Say you're like, okay, done. There's my sweet little like kitchen table arrangement. Perfect. You could be a little bit more dramatic with it, where you could, I'm kind of also zhuzhing a little bit. That's a technical term, obviously. You could add in a tall guy. Do I want to add white or this purple is the question. I think I want to add in the delphinium. Oops, they're all tied together. I didn't really process these that well. Yeah, definitely. So this as it is, it's very sweet. Remember what I pointed out earlier, the little lizzies had that little purple in there? This is a flower called delphinium, it's from the ranunculus family. Google ranunculus, R-A-N-U-N-C-U-L-U-S. You've totally seen the flower. Everybody loves it. It's such a beautiful flower. This is from the same family as that flower. It's one of the only naturally occurring blue things in nature. Generally speaking, when you see blue flowers, most of the time they're dyed, and I want to say I hate that. Like, there's rainbow roses too and all this stuff. There's a lot of like dyed flowers. That has kind of come back into fashion again in certain, it's a very like Brooklyn thing. There's a couple of designers in particular I'm thinking about. Text me and ask. I'm happy to send you like their Instagram pages. Generally speaking though, blue is not a flower, not a color you see in nature often. This is a more like purpley one, but these come in like bright blue. Obviously thistle is blue, irises. There's a couple of different options, but I love this sort of like light purple against those little lizzies. I think that'll be super sweet to go right there. Yeah. Kind of there in the back a little bit. When I cut it, it'll make more sense, but you want it to have that sort of like, you know, we're starting up high and kind of going forward sort of effect. So I'm going to trim this a little bit lower. At this point, all those stems in there, you've created a lot of structure. So if you do shoot a little bit too short, with these guys you can just pull off the bottom ones and make it like longer. But even if you want it to be like that amount of flower, the flower will probably stand up in that cross of the stems in the water. So I'm kind of sticking it in the back a little bit. I might want to kind of poke it around this thistle. Oops. And sometimes the flowers don't want to go where you want them to go. And you just do your best. Yeah, that's too long. So I'm going to shorten it a little bit. Talking about different principles, the way I think about floral design as art. Line. Boop, there's a straight line for you, right? Versus something that's a little bit more like scattered, like this this guy here, which is called kangaroo paw, that I'll use in the next one. You could throw some of that in here too if you want. I just don't feel like it. Sweet little arrangement, kind of zhuzh it around a little bit. Awesome, good. So then we reevaluate. I'm gonna replace this little uke. You could add more uke. I like using a bunch of different types of greens. I just love the texture of greenery, but they only had eucalyptus, and I didn't want to get too much. This is so sweet. Do I want to add in another thistle here is the question. Then you reevaluate. No, that's too much. But you know what I am going to do? So again, you could just leave that. We added a little bit more line here like that. But I love texture. So what I also have here is some dried lavender, which I love using this in arrangements because it could be as short or as long as you want. It's dried, it doesn't need to drink water, but it adds a little like accessory to it. So I'm gonna add a little bit of this to this arrangement. Maybe 3 stems. One kind of in the middle, not poking out too much, but just enough to kind of be like, hey, I'm here. Oops, but now he's not sticking in there. Okay, there we go. 1. 2 on the side here. Sweet little guys, and then one more little one right up in the front. Yes, and it's so cute. I love this. Also, if you live in Bushwick and you want one of these, just text me because I'm about to have a lot of flower arrangements. So there you have it. And I'm gonna nitpick because I can't walk away from something once I've done it. Okay, Pecker, you're done. There she blows. Let me get a little closer, you can see. So that's if it's a one-sided arrangement, meaning the back, which is facing me right now, and the front, which is facing you. You can put this against the wall if you have a table like I do, up against the wall, super cute. Nobody needs to see the back of it, but say you have a round table you want people to see. So we're gonna have to move some stuff around a little bit, changes the shape and also the lines a bit. You can still have stuff kind of coming out. I think that's a really great idea, but you may wanna relocate. Because these are so delicate, I'm taking out my little lavenders. We'll add them back in later. I'm also gonna take out this delphinium. Just, a cousin of delphinium is another plant called larkspur, which you've seen. It looks very similar. The like hat of it, like the hat of the flower, looks a little bit different, but I think it's the same like family, the same scientific family as well. Also this thistle. Anything that pokes out too much, I'm gonna take it out. So from here, again, the height of the vase does not necessarily dictate the height of the arrangement, but it does influence it a bit. So for this guy, I wouldn't really go above like, man, maybe this big. You can keep it super low if you want that look as well. I think I'm gonna do it like kind of poking out a little bit. Like I said earlier, I love that sort of secret gardening look. I like things sort of jumping out at you, and it's not super symmetrical. When you think of like a very round bouquet, like a bridal bouquet that like everything is exactly like matchy-matchy and everything's very symmetrical, that's like a very 80s sort of type of way of arranging flowers and is not super in fashion anymore. If you like it, go for it. I love symmetry. I think that's an awesome thing too. Personally, I like this a little bit better, and this tends to be a little bit more popular with most people. But you do you, really. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, because we are making it to a round arrangement, I am actually gonna add another tulip. Come to me, little ones. I also have behind these tulips a pincushion protea. Maybe I'll use it in here. I haven't decided yet. If I do, I'll tell you more about that. It's one of my favorite family of flowers. Okay, so these guys here, I'm peeling them all off. We don't want any of those greens going in the water, as little as we can, because we don't want them to rot out on us. Treat your flowers like really fancy vegetables, basically. Honestly, that's basically, you know, they're glorified veggies. Like really, really nice stuff you got at a farmer's market or something. Okay. So I'm gonna add in one more tulip here on the side. If I was starting from scratch and making a round arrangement, I would maybe do this a little bit differently, but just because I want to show you some other stuff as well, I'm gonna kind of jump through some tasks here. Cool, very cute. I am also gonna add one more piece of eucalyptus. Like I said earlier, I really like greenery and I love using it, but because I only have the one type, I don't want it to be too much. Like if it's just too much eucalyptus. This is such a beautiful piece of greenery though, that like you could and it would be fine. I just don't want that for me. And the nice thing about that is it's sort of like, kind of can become part of the arrangement as well. Like you can kind of work in a little piece, and I'm gonna do that because it's a great idea. You can work in a piece in between the flowers and it kind of just like pokes out as you go. Okay, cool. This is great already, and I'm gonna add back in this thistle. I am actually gonna shorten it a little bit. The thistle also have these like little like arms, it looks like, on the bottom. You can leave it, you can take it off. I'm actually gonna take them off because I have so much stuff going on in here that it's just density in there that I don't need. Don't worry about it if you want to keep it though, it doesn't really matter. We'll stick him in there. And you don't want anything to be squished as you're going to. Like move stuff around and see if there's a way that you can, like everyone can be seen. You're bothering to put the flower in there, so let it be at least like a texture. Don't let it get hidden. People do that with hydrangea sometimes, but people will use it and then just like stick stuff in it. It's like, yeah, but why aren't you just using anything else? Like why are you bothering to use a flower as like your like prop? Like let it be enjoyed. Am I gonna add in some kangaroo paw? No, but I think I'm gonna add in at least one more delphinium. With vertical flowers like this, when you're doing a round arrangement, I want to say, I'm in my life, I'm very hesitant to say, don't do this or definitely do this, because, you know, I think it's whatever you're saying, yes or no to in that context is going to be different from person to person, situation to situation. But that being said, you probably don't want to do just 2, because then you end up with like bunny ears, you know? If I was just starting from scratch, I may decide not to use this, but I'm going to now because I like a challenge. So we're gonna stick him in there on the side. Again, you may have to get rid of some of these little ones here at the bottom and then just stitch them. Or you can save them and make a flower crown class, or a flower crown. I'm gonna do a flower crown class next, but these little ones, they're just a little bit delicate. So this on its own, we wanna make sure we see everybody. That on its own, that works. This is a little bit domed. I might want to add, actually I just want to add the 1. I think that's going to work. But if you take a look at this, there's a lot of like orange ring on the outside and like purple and white on the inside. So to break that up, I kind of have 2 options. One, I have these sweet little carnations in here. I can just add some more like light pink. I wouldn't add another tulip because they're so big, but this is where I could add kangaroo paw, and I'm gonna. So kangaroo paw is an Australian wildflower, and it's called that because it looks like little kangaroo feet. Just like the lizzies, just like the thistle, we've got a lot of branch options. Sometimes you see more, someone groomed this before it got to Trader Joe's even. So what I'm gonna do, because this is a short one, and like I was saying earlier, at this point there's enough like density in the crisscross of the stems. I'm not too worried about these being too short. Starting from scratch, I might be like, I don't want to cut these knuckles because they won't be long enough, but I think it'll be okay. So I'm gonna start down here at the bottom, because then I'm gonna use more than 1 piece, but if I said, oh, I just need the 1, then I have this whole other stem I can use in something else, rather than if I cut this off and it's like, oh, I wish I had the top. I think I'm gonna do 2. So let's see, we'll do 2 here. That being said, I am gonna do this top here, okay. Long 1-piecer for later. So this is 2 in it, which is great, because that automatically means I can like get 2 for the price of 1. We love that in life. But certainly in florist world, might not be quite. What you'll notice too, if they're even length like this is, like you put it in and 1 is too short and 1 is too tall. So you can either put it in on an angle, which I'm gonna try and do. I might have to give up, we'll see. Nope, okay, we're good. Okay, that's really cute. And then 1 more over here. Because again, I don't want what I had earlier where it's like orange ring and then like purple and white. I'm gonna try and like break up the levels at which I'm putting them in. When you first start as a florist, generally speaking, it's very much like an old world trade where you like apprentice with someone and you are stuck in the back room somewhere making like dozen roses in a vase, which is a very, I'm talking about this grid, that's like a very specific skill to do that. And then from that, it's just variations on a theme. I'm gonna stick these lavender back in there because I love them. And they can kind of be plopped around. Oh my God, this came out great. Really, if you want flowers, give me a call, I'm in Bushwick. I'll put these little lavender guys in here. Again, I'm pulling stuff up as I go. It's not gonna be like set it and forget it. You're gonna have to kind of move stuff around. And zhuzh, which again is a technical term. Stick this little guy in here. And as you're going, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm kind of like, with the round ones especially, turn it so that you're looking at the front, whatever that is in that moment, and look to make sure that there's no like open spot. So like you could be like, great, it's perfect, and then be like, there's a huge gap in the back. So turn it and kind of move stuff around. You may end up saying like, oh, I don't want the thistle here, I want it over here, go for it. But have it be like your focus is here. One other thing that I like to do, and I like to encourage people to do when they're first starting with this, is like, I'm blanking on how it actually goes, but there's that old saying, it's like don't lose the forest when you're looking at the trees. Kind of the same thing where if you're like, I'm looking at this one flower, actually let yourself zoom out, like push it away from you so you can look at it like as a whole and like refresh what it is you're looking at. That sometimes illuminates, it's like, oh, there's a hole here. You know, maybe not, but it's worth changing your view, your point of view, which is a good piece of advice for life, I think, as well. This guy is done. Sometimes there's more of a front than not, but I think there's like 2 fronts here. Oh, this came out great. Okay, he's living in my kitchen for the next couple of days. And there you have it, your little round arrangement that we made into a round arrangement from a one-sided arrangement. And then when this ban is lifted, please support, I mean, all local businesses, but support those florists, because man, people are really across the world, all these different industries are really being impacted by all this, and there's a lot of fun ways that we can still engage with art, we can still engage with music, we can still engage with local small shops. But florists are usually somebody with a dream that started a shop, and it's their baby and it's their life. So please even check out your neighborhood florist and see if they're offering delivery. Some people are doing deliveries that have, with certain disinfecting of things before they go out. But look and see, because flowers make everybody happy, and I think to support those people, it does some good for the world and the community and our local businesses. So I hope that was fun. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions or you want follow-up or you want something different, shoot me a message. Typically speaking, if you do, no pressure, whatever, I had fun doing this, but if you take like a flower design class, you're also going to be there in person and take home an arrangement, so it's different, but those are like $100 a pop. If you feel like sending me some money for this, whatever, buy me a coffee, buy me a beer, like $5, $10, that would be fine. Also, you don't have to, because like I said, I had fun doing this and I'm home. So I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something, and be well.